Before the rebellion, Westeros stood uneasy beneath a king it no longer trusted. A realm cracked by fear, a court whispering behind locked doors,
What do we do now?
and a dynasty that had ruled for nearly 300 years, slowly poisoning itself from within. In the Red Keep, King Aerys II Targaryen, once proud, once brilliant, had become a creature of shadows and suspicion. His nails grown long, his hair wild, his eyes burning with the constant terror that everyone, everywhere, was plotting against him. But beyond the madness of the king, another force was rising. A quieter one, a gentler one, and far more dangerous. Crown Prince Rhaegar, scholar, warrior, beloved by the realm in ways his father could never be. A man who read prophecies as if they were memories, and carried the weight of destiny like a cloak he could never remove. When word spread of a grand tourney at Harrenhal, the largest in living memory, the realm stirred. Every house sent its finest, every knight sharpened his lance, and every lord whispered the same question: why now? Why here? Why would a minor house host the greatest gathering of nobles since Aegon the Conqueror? Some said it was extravagance. Others suspected conspiracy. But most believed the truth. Harrenhal was the only place vast enough to contain the tension swelling inside the Seven Kingdoms. The North came with quiet honor. The Starks, carved from cold stone and older laws. Among them, Lyanna Stark, fierce, wild-hearted, and already promised to Robert Baratheon. A betrothal meant to tie the North to the Stormlands, and to seal a friendship older than their fathers. But fate does not bend for promises, and destiny rarely respects the plans of men. From the Stormlands came Robert himself, young, laughing, unstoppable. A man whose love struck like a thunderbolt, and whose fury would one day shake the realm to its core. The Reach arrived in banners of green and gold. The Vale descended from its lonely mountains. The Westerlands glittered like their mines. Even the Martells of Dorne watched with a quiet, burning curiosity. And then, at last, the Silver Prince. Rhaegar rode into Harrenhal, not as a warrior chasing glory, but as a man searching for answers written in the stars. The lists opened. Lances shattered. The cheers of 10,000 filled the air like a living storm. And Rhaegar was magnificent. Each tilt won with grace. Each blow struck with purpose. Each victory whispered with wonder. When he claimed the champion's crown, no one was surprised. But what followed fractured the realm more deeply than any sword could. Tradition demanded he crown his wife Elia Martell, but the prince rode past her, past his family, past every rule that held the kingdoms together. He stopped before Lyanna Stark, wolf daughter of Winterfell, betrothed to another, untouchable by law, by honor, by fate, and with a single gesture, with a crown of blue winter roses, he shattered the peace of Westeros. Lyanna Stark was named Queen of Love and Beauty. In that moment, the crowd fell silent. Aerys's eyes widened with suspicion. Robert's heart cracked with rage. And the Starks knew a storm was coming. A storm born not of armies, but of a crown laid in the wrong lap. History would call it a scandal. Poets would call it destiny. But those who were there, those who felt the air tighten around them, knew the truth. Robert's rebellion began at Harrenhal, not with a sword, but with a flower. The tourney ended, but its echo did not fade. What happened at Harrenhal spread across the realm like wildfire carried by whispers. Some called it a prince's folly. Others claimed it was prophecy. But the Starks felt it as a wound. Robert Baratheon returned to Storm's End, laughing louder than before, drinking deeper than before. But underneath the thunder of his joy lived a fear he could not name. The fear of losing the woman he loved more fiercely than he loved life itself. Eddard Stark rode north in silence. He spoke little. He smiled less. Winter men rarely showed their feelings, but even the coldest forests could sense his unease. And in King's Landing, Aerys listened to every rumor with growing madness. The king who once doubted everyone, now doubted everything. He saw shadows in courtyards, plots in every corner of the throne room, and in his own son, the heir of dragons, he saw betrayal painted in prophecy. Then, one day, Lyanna Stark vanished. No warning, no message, no trace but the echo of her laughter fading into memory. Some said she fled willingly. Others swore she was taken. But truth mattered little in a realm already bleeding suspicion. Robert heard the news first. The cup fell from his hand. The storm inside him broke free. In that moment he loved her more than any man had ever loved a woman, and hated Rhaegar more than any warrior had ever hated a woman. Rival. Brandon Stark heard next. And Brandon did not wait. He did not think. He did not breathe. He rode south as if dragged by fury itself, with his companions thundering behind him. They reached the Red Keep gates, demanding justice, demanding Rhaegar come forth and die. But Rhaegar was gone, disappeared into a fate only he understood. Aerys listened to Brandon's accusation not as a father defending a son, but as a madman desperate to feed the fire burning in his mind. Brandon Stark was seized, his companions taken, their weapons stripped, their honor mocked. When Lord Rhaegar Stark came to reclaim his son, seeking truth and justice, the king offered neither. Before the Iron Throne, Aerys pronounced a sentence so cruel it scarred the history of Westeros. Rhaegar Stark was bound in armor, suspended over wildfire, burned alive, cooked within his own steel, forced to die screaming for a son he could not save. Brandon Stark was placed in a noose, a sword just out of reach. He strangled himself to death trying to save his father. No trial, no mercy, only flames. And a king laughing as the North lost its lord and heir in a single hour. When ravens flew to the eyrie, they carried with them not news, but demands. Aerys ordered the heads of Robert Baratheon and Eddard Stark. He believed fear would break them. He believed fire would make them bow. But the realm he tried to control was already slipping through his fingers. Jon Arryn stood in the high hall of the eyrie as he read the king's decree. He looked not at parchment, but at two boys he had raised like sons. Two boys now condemned to die for crimes they did not commit. And in that quiet moment of decision, a rebellion was born. Jon Arryn refused the king. He called his banners. He chose family over fear, honor over obedience. The Vale rose. The North would rise, the Stormlands would follow, and the realm, whether it wanted to or not, marched toward war. A prince had crowned a maiden with winter roses. A king had drowned justice in wildfire. Now Westeros would burn for it. Rebellion does not begin with armies. It begins with a single choice, made by a single man, in a single moment. Jon Arryn's refusal to surrender Eddard Stark and Robert Baratheon was that moment.
The eyrie stands resolute against this injustice.
It was the strike of flint before a wildfire, the breath before a storm. When the banners of the Vale unfurled, outlined against the snow-capped mountains of the moon, the realm understood. The king had made enemies of the only men who still believed in him. The Vale rises. In the eyrie's high chambers, ravens flew like black arrows into the morning sky. Every message carried the same truth. The king has broken faith. Knights of the Vale armed themselves in silence. Steel rang. Shields locked. Old oaths woke from centuries of slumber. The rebellion had its spine. The North answers. Far to the north, Winterfell's great hall trembled with the echo of war horns. Eddard Stark bowed his head not in grief, but in cold resolve. His father and brother were dead. His sister was missing. His honor had been scorched by wildfire. And now the king demanded his head. The North did not debate. It did not hesitate. It rose like the coming of winter slow, unstoppable and merciless. Karstark, Manderley, Umber, Bolton, ancient houses with ancient grudges. They marched not for glory, not for vengeance, but because the blood of Starks had been spilled. And when Stark blood is spilled, the North remembers. The Stormlands erupt. At storm's end, thunder cracked across the sky as Robert Baratheon strapped on his warhammer. His rage was not loud anymore. It was quiet, focused, dangerous. He had lost Lyanna. He had lost his future. He had lost everything but the storm inside him. And someone was going to pay. The Stormlands rallied behind him with a ferocity that stunned the realm. Baratheons had always ruled by storm, but now they became the storm. The Riverlands break free. Word reached Riverrun of Aerys' justice. Hoster Tully's face hardened. His daughters would one day marry Eddard Stark and Jon Arryn. His future was tied to theirs. He had no choice but to join the rebellion or be consumed by it. So the Riverlands rose not for love, not for honor, but for survival. And in doing so, they cut the realm in half. The first blood of war. The rebellion moved quickly. Robert won skirmish after skirmish, his warhammer smashing armored knights aside as if they were twigs before a storm. Songs would one day call him a hero, but in these early battles he was something far more terrifying, a man who no longer cared whether he lived or died. The Lannisters watched from the west. Dorne waited in silence. The Reach guarded its fields. The Crownlands shook under the weight of rebellion, and through it all, Rhaegar Targaryen, Crown Prince, beloved heir, the spark of the entire war, was nowhere to be found. No letters, no commands, no armies, just silence. A silence that turned loyalists anxious and rebels furious. The near death of a future king. At Summerhal, the ruins of legend's Robert Baratheon faced his first true test. The loyalists struck hard. They meant to end the rebellion with a single sword stroke. Robert's shield splintered.
Shields now! Kill them all!
His ribs cracked. His blood stained the ground where Targaryens had once dreamed of dragons reborn. He should have died. But storms do not break. They break everything around them. With a final swing of his warhammer, Robert crushed his enemy's line and rose again, wounded but alive. The rebellion would continue. The storm would not be stopped. War had begun. Westeros was split, and the dragon's heir remained hidden in shadow. But soon, very soon, he would return, and when he did, the Trident itself would tremble. A rebellion can burn bright, but the true test is what happens when the fire burns back. After months of silence, confusion, and fear, the Targaryen response finally came. Not from the king on the Iron Throne, but from the prince who had started it all. Rhaegar Targaryen returned. The return of the Dragon Prince. He rode into King's Landing under a pale morning sun. No songs, no cheers, only whispers. Whispers of Lyanna Stark. Whispers of prophecy. Whispers of a realm on the edge of ruin. Rhaegar found his father locked in the Red Keep shadows, pacing halls lined with wildfire. Aerys did not greet him as a son, but as a threat. Yet even in madness, the king knew one thing. Only Rhaegar could stop the rebellion. So he gave his son command, not out of trust, but out of desperation. Loyalist forces gather. Across the Crownlands, ravens screeched with new orders. Lords who had feared the king began to rally at the prince's call. Jon Connington fierce, loyal, burning for honor. Lords Mouton and Derry, old names tied to the throne. Valyrian fleet's guardians of Blackwater Bay. Houses still clinging to the memory of dragons. The realm had shifted. For the first time, the rebels were no longer fighting a mad king, but a prince who inspired loyalty and fear. Aerys' paranoia turns into madness. But while Rhaegar gathered armies, Aerys gathered wildfire. He trusted no one. Not the King's Guard, not the small council, not even his own blood. He whispered of plots, burning plots, traitors in every shadow, enemies in every breath. Doors were barred. Spies filled the city like rats. Pyromancers walked freely through the halls of the Red Keep. The king prepared not to win the war, but to end the world. The rebels struggle. Meanwhile, the rebellion was stretched thin. Robert Baratheon was wounded. Eddard Stark marched south to join him. Jon Arryn held the Vale together. Hoster Tully guarded the Riverlands, but one stronghold stood alone. Storm's End, and Stannis Baratheon, rigid, relentless, unyielding, refused to surrender it. The Loyalist navy circled the fortress like a tightening noose. Food dwindled, hope thinned, yet Stannis would not bend. He became a symbol, a blade of pure iron in a kingdom of brittle oaths. The hunt for Robert. As Rhaegar's loyalists moved, the rebellion faced its darkest moment. Robert was hunted across the Reach, forced to flee through rivers, forests, and broken villages.
Check the ruins!
He traveled, wounded, with only a few men to shield him. Every loyalist commander had the same order: bring me Robert Baratheon, dead or alive. And the one who came closest was Rhaegar's fiercest friend, Jon Connington. The Battle of the Bells begins. In the town of Stony Sept, Robert hid among its narrow streets. His wounds festered. His strength faltered. The rebellion teetered. Connington surrounded the town. He searched every home, every alley, every bell tower. He believed he would end the rebellion in a single blow and restore Rhaegar's honor. The bells rang through the streets, calling the people to hide, to pray, to fear.
Get out of our town! We will not stand
But
for
soon,
this tyranny!
they would ring for war. Battle was coming.
Freedom now!
A prince's pride, a rebel's fury, a town caught between two storms.
Forward,
And in those
quickly!
bell-choked
Move to the
streets,
center!
the fate of the rebellion would be decided. The bells end, and a prince falls. The bells of Stony Sept fell silent. Smoke drifted over shattered homes, burned wagons, broken shields. Jon Connington had failed, and the rebel cause, battered, bloodied, began to rise again. Robert Baratheon marched north with fury in his veins. Eddard Stark at his side. Armies rallying behind a man who refused to die. Across the realm, loyalists felt the tide turning. And in King's Landing, a king began to crack. The last muster of House Targaryen, When Rhaegar heard of Connington's defeat, he said nothing. No rage, no despair, only resolve. The Dragon Prince gathered every loyal sword he could find, Crownland's knights, river lords who still clung to old oaths, the finest cavalry the realm had left, and under banners bearing the three-headed dragon, he rode to the Trident, his eyes fixed not on glory, not on prophecy, but on a single truth. Only one of them would survive the river, the Ruby Ford. The armies met where the river ran red with dusk. Spears bristled, shields locked, winds howled across the banks. Robert charged with the fury of a storm. Rhaegar met him like a blade of silver, warhammer against armor of rubies, prophecy against vengeance, future against past. In the end, one blow decided it, a shattering crack, a spray of rubies, a prince falling into the water that bears his legend. Rhaegar Targaryen was gone, and with him, the last true hope of his house. The loyalists broke, they fled, and the rebellion surged forward like a flood. The sack of King's Landing. Panic swept the capital long before the armies arrived. Whispers of defeat, whispers of wildfire, whispers of a king lost in madness. Aerys II snapped completely. He ordered caches of wildfire lit beneath the city, ordered every man questioned, every whisper punished, every gate sealed. But the greatest betrayal came from the man he trusted most, Tywin Lannister. He rode to the gates with smiles and promises. The city opened its doors, and the lions entered. Fire, blood, screams echoing through the alleys. Ilya Martell and her children fell beneath the mountain's shadow. Amory Lorch cut down another life tied to dragons. In the throne room, Jaime Lannister drew a sword, not to protect his king, but to save a city from him. Aerys died whispering, "Burn them all." The dragon's fire ended not with battle, but with betrayal. The Tower of Joy. Far from the burning capital, Eddard Stark rode into the red mountains of Dorne, only a few companions behind him. 3 white-cloaked legends before him. The King's Guard refused to yield, their vows bound not to a king, but to a secret. Steel clashed in the lonely dawn, 7 against 3, honor against duty. And when the sun broke over the horizon, only Ned Stark remained standing. Inside the tower, a whisper waited. Lyanna, fading, bleeding, cradling a child born in silence. "Promise me," she breathed. A promise that shaped the next generation. A truth buried beneath winter and war. Ned left the tower with an infant in his arms, and a lie heavy in his heart. The fall of Dragonstone. As the rebellion claimed the Iron Throne, one last spark of Targaryen fire remained. Dragonstone. Stannis Baratheon tightened his siege. Hunger ruled the island. Rhaegar Targaryen died giving birth to her last child. Daenerys was carried away through storm and shadow. The dynasty that had ruled for nearly 300 years was reduced to 2 children fleeing into the night. The last embers of a broken house, a new king, and new shadows. Robert Baratheon took the Iron Throne. Cheers rolled through the capital, feasts thundered through the keep, but none of it healed the wounds the war had carved. Dorne simmered with rage. The North mourned quietly. The Riverlands remembered every cost. The Vale stood watchful, the Stormlands rebuilt, and the Crownlands nursed old scars. A kingdom victorious, but far from peaceful. Every rebellion leaves ghosts. Every crown demands a price. Robert had won his throne, but the child hidden in the north, the anger burning in Dorne, the dragons scattered across the sea. The seeds of the next war were already planted.